For English, press 1. For a collect call, enter your PIN. Please enter the area code and phone number you are calling now. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. You may hear silence during the acceptance of your call. Please continue to hold. Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from
Andrew, please answer, Nana.
an inmate at
Bernalillo County Metropolitan Detention Center.
This call is subject to recording and monitoring. To accept charges, press 1. To refuse charges, press 2. If you would like to permanently block your number from receiving, thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
Hey.
Hey.
What are you doing?
Why you call me Nana?
Hey, I'm in MDC. Can you ask my Nana to come put me some money and you'll give it back to her, like $20 right now?
I think she said that Albert, I talked to her today, she said Albert gave her $20 to send to you.
I'm
And so
do an online order for me for the $30 because I can't. If it's not done by tomorrow, I won't be able to get it.
did you get the money I sent you?
Yeah, but it's stayed in Sandoval.
Well, where are you at?
I'm in MDC.
Well, what are you doing over there?
I don't know. They just fucking transferred me over here like 5 days ago.
Well, so what?
I don't know,
So
all my money stayed over there that all you guys sent me. I never got your letter though. I don't know if they put the money on my books or if they just send it back to you. I don't know what's going on.
I'll have to call and find out tomorrow.
If not, Auntie, just do me an online order, please. They were like $30, Auntie.
I can't do it today. I was getting the money that I was going to send you. I forgot about I'll call your Nana and see if she'll do it for the extra $10.
Yeah, just ask her if she'll do the $30 online order and I'll just give it back to her.
What is it for?
It's called iCare.com, and then you just put my date of birth, and then it's the lowest one. It'll pop up. It's like $23.
You know how to get on the internet and all that?
Yeah, well, my auntie Valerie does, because they done it for me before.
Okay, well, I'll call her as soon as I get up the phone with you, and I'm putting money on, putting $20 on my phone so you can call me.
Alright. Thank you guys, I appreciate it. It's just, I don't know why they have me over here in MGC. They just left all my stuff over there and just brought me over here. And they have me in res and Sec 4, and I don't know, it's all fucked up.
Huh. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to have to call the Warrant tomorrow and find out.
That's what I'm saying. And then Danielle, I thought you said Danielle wanted to visit. I thought she would have fucking came over here now that I'm over here now.
I don't think she knows you're there. Nobody knows you're there.
That's what. Call her right now and tell her that there's visits right now. If she could come and fucking, or if she could do me an online and you'll pay her. Either way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll call her and Nana because she thought you were in Sandoval.
Yeah, well, I've been over here since Thursday. They don't let me out of my room.
Huh.
I've been in my room since now.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm in Sec 4 and they put me in reds and everything.
Yeah, they're going to keep you in reds. Anywhere you go, you're going to be in reds. It's a high-profile case.
That's bullshit, eh? Motherfuckers, eh?
Yeah, well,
I was trying to call you this morning, but
I answered it, but it was saying that to set up an online account, and I was at work, and I couldn't stop to do it because it takes a minute to do it.
yeah, no, well, because Crystal sent me $30 over there, right?
Yeah.
And Luz sent me $50, right?
Who did?
Luz,
Uh-huh.
that boy?
Yeah. Oh, that boy did send you money?
Yeah, he sent me $50. I got it, but the only one I didn't get was yours.
Yeah, because he told me he was going to send you $50 because he asked you for the information, but you know, Michael,
Yeah,
he didn't believe he said.
I tripped out when I got it. I was like, what the fuck? Because I thought it was from...
Well, I posted it on Facebook, and I told him that, you know, what's done is done, and that right now all you, the thing that you need the most from all of us as a family is your, you know, support.
Yeah, you can get on my Facebook, Auntie. It's under Andrew Biggs Sanchez.
Andrew Big Sanchez?
Yeah, and then the cop word is Andrew Sanchez.
Yeah, okay.
Just changed my last name because I was just scared to put my last name on there, no?
Yeah.
But, I don't know, I should have a lot of friends on there too. I don't know if they fucking...
You're all over the news, everybody knows.
Still?
Yes, still.
Why? Why it's already been 2 weeks? Oh, heck no. What about, what's her name? Did I really shoot her or no?
Yeah, he shot her in the foot. But she's saying now that now that she realized that her own fucking mouth has her in the same position as you, because they're going to charge, they want to charge her with accessory.
Better than fuck. I told.
And
Pass the witness at this time.
Good afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon, sir.
All right, so you were assigned as the lead detective for the Rio Rancho Police Department, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then and you were jointly sharing these duties, I guess, in some capacity with Steve Montano with the state police, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the decision was made fairly early on that the state police would be in charge of at least collection of evidence and then determining what was to be tested, correct?
The collection of evidence and then collectively, my agency as well as me and Detective Park sent the items of evidence to the state crime lab.
Oh, okay. So you played a distinct role in what was to be tested, or at least what you believed was necessary for testing, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so, I don't want to overstate or understate your role. I don't mean to be disrespectful. That's why I'm asking the question.
Fine, sir.
There were shared duties with you and Agent Montano then, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And one of the reasons to have New Mexico State Police do the test or do the collection was they're very well equipped for large crime scenes, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Not to say that your department's not equipped, but the state police they're equipped to do large multiple crime scene kind of crimes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that a fair description?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And not taking anything away from your department, but this was a big case and everyone wanted to assist, right?
Oh, of course, sir.
And one of the things you didn't want to happen was there to be a lot of other ancillary involvement, BCSO, APD. There needed to be a clearinghouse, so to speak, of evidence in this case, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So then in this situation, I think you're at some point in time, and please correct me if I get the timeline wrong at all, but you proceeded after Andrew Romero was taken into custody. You proceeded to the New Mexico State Police Office, where Andrew Romero, Crystal Romero, and Michelle Candelaria were all there being talked to, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if I know this right, and please correct me again if I'm wrong, Andrew was in one room, and then Michelle and Crystal were in other rooms, and you could kind of see what was going on in all three rooms, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm not going to ask you what anybody said.
Okay.
Okay. But you were privy to these interviews, right?
Yes, sir.
Privy to, like, and the way it works is there's a room, and then there's a glass window that you can see in, but you can't see out who's standing there watching. Is that right?
Correct, sir.
And I've never been in there, and I've certainly never been interviewed, but that's how it sets up. So you can stand on the outside, and then there's an agent or two in the room with the person they're talking, right?
Correct. It's a room separated by two interview rooms, and you can sit in the middle monitoring one room, interview room, and then monitoring the second room.
Okay. And following the interview, not telling me what Crystal told you, but following the interview with Ms. Romero, the Dodge Durango was discovered, was it not?
Honestly, sir, I can't recall what time it was discovered.
Okay. But information was gathered following the interview with Crystal that led to the discovery of the Durango. Do you recall that?
I can't recall specifically No, I can't recall that.
Oh, okay, all right. But ultimately, the Dodger? Okay. 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 Do you remember writing out an affidavit where you said Ms. Romero was interviewed by state police? During the interview, Crystal advised the location of the Durango sports utility vehicle used during the shooting of Officer Brenner?
Yes.
Okay. And you wouldn't have purposely written something that wasn't true in an affidavit for
No, sir.
Okay. Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. And then subsequently, the Durango was discovered on Kavanaugh Drive Northwest in Rio Rancho, right?
And actually, sir, it was Albuquerque.
Oh, it was Albuquerque. Oh,
Yes.
okay. I know the boundary line between...
The boundary is close.
Okay. So it was actually an address in Albuquerque, but it was only just a few minutes away from the scene where Officer Bennett was shot, right?
I would say so, yes.
Okay. All right. And so, so when the location of the Durango was discovered, right? It was on a residential street on Kavanaugh, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And who processed that Durango? Was it your department or was it somebody else?
No, that was state police, sir.
State police. All right. And when you arrived at the Durango, was it sealed?
I never went to that location, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. So you had nothing to do with processing that scene.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When the Durango was delivered, I think you said when the Durango was delivered to your department for safekeeping, right? Safekeeping, right? For
Yes,
evidence. You said the key was in the Durango, right?
Yes, all evidence was signed for from New Mexico State Police by Detective Sean Ginn.
Okay.
And when the vehicle was delivered sometime later, I don't know if it was days later or not, the key was with the vehicle.
Okay. Now let's talk about the way evidence is tagged in your department. Okay. Now, do you have a knowledge of how evidence is tagged, how it's assigned a number, that sort of thing?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, for instance, if a Q-tip swab is assigned, the numeral is taken in, not necessarily in this case, but in any case, if a swab of a blood sample is taken into evidence, it's going to be assigned a number, right?
Yes.
And it's going to be assigned a date that it comes in, and it's logged in, right?
Correct.
Okay. And there's an overall evidence log that's kept in your department, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. For this or any other case?
Yes, sir.
Whether it's an easy case with one item of evidence or whether it's a massive case with lots of items of evidence, there's a certain protocol, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that protocol would be to assign a specific item of evidence a specific number, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And once that Q-tip, using my example, is assigned the number 1, does that number change over time?
No, you can assign item numbers within our system. It's called the BEAST system. So you can make assignments because you can have multiple crime scenes, and you can't have the same item numbers used once. So you can't use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then at another crime scene use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 involving the same case. So we'll assign different numbers in regards to that.
All right. And specifically, say for instance, in this case, there were both numerical designations, right?
Yes, sir.
And there were also alphabetical plus numerical designations, right?
Yes, sir.
Like for instance, and I'm just going to use a random number. Item number 1 was a memory card.
Yes, sir.
Do you have an evidence report with you?
I do. I have one here, sir.
Oh, okay. What's the date on that evidence report?
This one's from March 2nd, 2016.
Okay. March 2nd, 2016.
Yes.
Okay. Is item number 1 a PNY memory card? 1 AR1 through 1 AR through AR 10 or something like that, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it appears.
Okay. And AR is significant because that means Andrew Romero, right?
I don't know the designators that state police used.
Okay.
I would just be assuming.
Okay. And so you didn't give it that number when it came to evidence. It already had those numbers, right?
Yes, sir.
Item number 1, the card. Item number AR1, whatever that was, right?
Yes, sir.
And so that was just signed for by Officer Guillen. Is it Guillen?
Guillen.
Guillen.
Yes, sir.
Signed for by Officer Guillen and then placed in your evidence log, correct?
Yes, once it was signed for, I assisted in entering it into our B system. and then we actually gave it to the evidence techs who entered it into the vault. Yes.
Okay, and this is when something goes from Officer Guillen's hands to the evidence tech, it's very concise, right? Because you don't want something to get stuck in somebody's desk drawer or something like that, right?
Right.
I mean, this isn't a whimsical kind of a whimsical kind of system, is it?
Right, sir.
And your department has certain protocols to make sure things don't get lost or mislaid or misplaced, right?
Correct.
Or if it's something for DNA testing, to make sure it doesn't get contaminated in some way, right?
Correct.
And when you receive something like a Q-tip swab, it's going to come to your department in certain packaging, right?
Correct. All these items came sealed, packaged and sealed, initials from whoever collected it, and what the item was.
Okay. And then let's talk about some of the items for a moment, and we'll get back to the evidence log that you sent off for testing, okay?
Okay.
Now, was there consultation between you and Agent Montano about what you thought was necessary for testing?
I think it was a collective effort as far as not only Agent Montano, but also agents who had processed the crime scene.
All right. And of course, a swab of blood is going to be something that definitely is going to get sent off to the lab, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And any sort of fingerprints that you're able to lift or possible fingerprints, those are going to go off to the lab as well to be processed for identifiers, right?
Correct, sir.
And Lord knows the firearm and any shell casing, that's going to all go off to the lab, right?
Yes, sir.
And there's some discretion, is there not? I mean, the agents in this case have to make a judgment call as to what you think might be important at the time, right?
Correct. I mean, since there's up to 200 pieces of evidence, you can't send everything to the lab.
No, you can't. And also too, the one time, it's not like you have one opportunity to send things to the lab. You can, during the course of an investigation, you could also supplement things to the lab, right?
Correct, sir.
And in this case, there were items sent to the lab in 2015 and then again in 2016, correct?
Yes, initially we sent, I believe, 41 items. And in 2016, I believe we sent 17 items.
So it's not like you just have a one-time shot to get it right. The lab doesn't work like that, right?
Right, sir.
They're going to process your requests, and if they're busy, they'll tell you, we'll get to it. It's in the queue or in the line, but it's not like you have to make sure you got it all right the first time, right?
Right. In regards to that, there's some items that the crime lab won't process for us,
Okay.
But those are on more minor cases.
Okay. Say like maybe a littering case, they're not going to do a lot of DNA, right?
Well, no. As of now, they won't even do some touch DNA due to the fact of the high volume and the amount that it costs.
But that kind of begs my next question. This is a murder of a police officer, so it's going to get fairly high priority, right? In your
Yes, sir.
experience.
They gave us priority.
Yeah, and you were never told, don't send us any more stuff, we're overwhelmed, right?
It never was.
Okay. All right, so let me ask you if you can look at, if you will, item number 5.
I am looking at that.
Okay. And item number 5, it looks like it was collected on 5/27, right?
Yes, sir.
And it was collected by Monica Casals. Now, Monica Casals is an officer with your department, right?
She's a detective, yes.
A detective, I'm sorry, no disrespect. She's one of your detectives who was involved in evidence collection,
Yes.
okay? And that is a scalp of hair collected from OMI, right?
Correct. She did collect after OMI took all the evidence from Officer Benner, then they packaged that individually and they signed over chain of custody to us. And Detective Monica Casals signed over that chain of custody.
And it's certainly not unusual for the Office of the Medical Investigator to collect evidence, right?
Yes.
Because that's one of the things that OMI is tasked with is cause of death, if there's any if there is any evidence on the body, and they're going to take precautions to make sure that they don't miss something, that they don't botch an investigation, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and things like bagging of hands, so to speak, so that fingernails can be scraped for DNA. That's something that maybe would happen in your experience at the OMI, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, the next item, in particular, number 6, that was also packaged by Monica Casals, right? It's evidence item number 6.
Yes.
All right. And that's one sealed envelope with one item, right?
Right.
And that looks to me, and if I'm reading this right, it says GSR left hand collected from OMI, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that GSR, you know what GSR is, don't you?
It would be gunshot residue, from my understanding of that.
Yeah, so there was a swab. In your experience, you know GSR to be a test for gunpowder residue, right?
Correct, but not with the state lab, no.
No, but it was certainly collected by the Office of the Medical Investigator, right?
Yes, it was.
Because the Office of the Medical Investigator thought that was relevant in this case, relevant enough to take a swab and send it to your department, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Then before we go back to the evidence log, I want to ask you. You identified a moment ago a warrant for Andrew Romero, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you identified for the jury this warrant was issued for a probation violation, right?
Yes, sir.
During the course of your investigation, you became privy to information that Tabitha Littles also had a warrant for her arrest, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was an active warrant, as well as the warrant for Andrew, right?
Yes, sir.
When you were at State Police, when Mr. Romero was being interviewed, and when Crystal was being interviewed, and when Michelle Candelaria was being interviewed, all of those individuals were speaking with police officers, right? And again, I'm not asking what they said, right?
Yes.
Okay. And they were there, and a DNA sample was obtained from Andrew Romero while he was at the police station, right?
I don't know exactly, I'm assuming. I don't know exactly when.
And you know from your experience that a DNA sample is relatively easy to obtain once you've got a warrant for a standard, right?
Yes, it is.
And that's just, it simply amounts to taking a Q-tip, swabbing the inside of the cheek, dropping it in what looks like a longer test tube and sealing it up, right?
Correct.
Okay. It's a procedure that doesn't take a whole lot of time, right?
No, it does not.
Okay. And then individuals were fingerprinted best as you know, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And they were photographed, right?
Yes.
Okay. While my co-counsel's looking for a photograph, I'll ask you another question. But you're privy to those photographs of Michelle Candelaria and Crystal Romero that were taken at State Police, right? You've seen them?
Yes, sir.
And you think you could identify them once I pull them out of the book?
I think I can.
Okay. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Here we go. All right. So do you have the body one? Okay. Good. All right. So, all right, Judge. Can you turn it on? That's not it. Ready? Okay. So do you recognize this individual as anybody that you know to be associated with this case?
Yes, I believe that's Crystal Romero.
Okay. And is this the photograph, best as you recall? Oh, let me do it for identification purposes. This is 287 for identification purposes. Do you recall this to be what Crystal Romero looked like on the night she was at State Police being interviewed by State Police officers?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. All right. And then I'm going to have you, all right, I'm going to have you look at 289. And do you recognize number 289?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who is this person, as you recall?
Michelle Candelaria.
Okay. And Michelle Candelaria was one of the people in the vehicle when Andrew Romero was taken into custody, right?
Yes.
And this is an up-close photograph of Miss Candelaria on the evening that she was photographed at State Police, right?
I believe so, yes.
After Andrew was taken into custody and while they were all being talked to by the police.
I don't know at what point it was taken because I didn't take the photograph.
Okay. But you know this photograph to have been taken by the New Mexico State Police, right?
Yes, sir.
Best as you know.
Best as I know, yes, sir.
All right. And then I'll have you look at 288. 288, is that also Michelle Candelaria?
Yes, sir.
It's just more of a far-away photograph getting her whole body, right?
Correct, sir.
Okay. And this was the Michelle Candelaria that was in the vehicle with Andrew Romero, correct?
Yes, sir.
Best you know.
Yes.
All right, so you were asked about, in your training experience, a little bit about traffic stop protocol, right?
Yes, sir.
And one of the things that you know as a police officer, you were a beat cop or a line officer for a time before you became a detective, right?
Yes, sir.
And in Taos, did you say?
No, it was Las Vegas.
Oh, in Vegas.
Las
Okay.
Vegas, New Mexico, as well as military police.
Okay, so then you have lots of experience with traffic stops, right?
I do.
And you're taught as a young officer, either at the academy or wherever you learn, that every traffic stop can be very, very dangerous, right?
Yes, sir.
It can be as easy as just writing a ticket or writing a warning and everybody goes away fine, or it can turn deadly, right?
Yes, sir.
And so there's certain protocols that officers are going to follow, and this is kind of beaten into you from early on that you don't want to do anything to put your life in jeopardy, right?
Correct.
And so there's all sorts of things like positioning of the police vehicle behind the stopped vehicle, right, to provide
Correct.
cover, right?
Correct.
And there's a certain distance you're going to want to park behind the vehicle to give you a good field of vision, right?
Correct.
And you're going to want to, if you think there's going to be trouble, you want to make sure you can see everybody's hands, right?
Correct.
And once somebody exits the vehicle, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're ever going to be outmanned or outnumbered, right?
Once they
Well,
exit?
any time. If there's more than one person in the vehicle, that adds a degree of difficulty to the stop because you don't ever want to be outnumbered as a police officer, right?
Correct, dependent on the situation that you're dealing with.
Right. And so officers, yourself, and all the officers in your department are trained to be hyper alert, right?
Correct.
And one of the things that you're taught is if an officer believes there's going to be a problem, they call for backup, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you have any reason to believe that Officer Benner thought himself to be in a situation where he would...
Objection. Calls for speculation.
Well, may we approach real quick?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you've reviewed the dispatch, you've heard the dispatch recordings of Officer Benner calling in both Tabitha Little's information and this other individual, Albert Fesquez, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And based on what you've heard from Officer Benner's voice, do you believe in your training and experience that he felt any danger, at least when he was calling in the information?
At which point?
Well, when he was calling in the information, when he was calling in Albert Fesquez.
I can't say.
Okay.
I mean,
I don't
it
want to...
depends on...
I don't want you to speculate.
Okay.
But was there ever an indication that he thought that he called for backup? In not this case, but any other case, where an officer observes a firearm in a car, right? If an officer sees a firearm in a floorboard or sees someone with a firearm, they're going, based on their training and experience that you know, to be calling for backup or calling in some sort of emergency situation, right?
In that situation you're giving me, not necessarily, because it's legal to have a firearm in your vehicle.
Okay.
It's the way that the person is acting.
Fair enough.
You know, what that person does to make you feel if you're in danger or not.
Certainly.
So I've done several traffic stops on vehicles where a person has had a firearm in the vehicle and I didn't call for backup.
Ideally, when you go up to a traffic stop and someone says, "Officer, listen, here are my hands, I've got a gun under the seat." That's what you want them to say.
Yes,
to
sir.
know they've got a gun, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in this situation, based on evidence that testimony that you've heard, testimony that you've reviewed, Tabitha Littles indicated to police that she was thrown out of the vehicle, right?
Correct.
Okay. And one of the things you learned from her testimony was that at least she alleged that the officer ran past her going up to the Dodge Durango, right?
He checked on her and then ran past the vehicle, yes.
There was no indication that Officer Benner cuffed or detained Tabitha Littles in any way, right?
No indication.
Okay. And so Tabitha Littles, based on her, based on what she's given, in statement she's given to police, she was behind Officer Benner between his vehicle and the Dodge Durango, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then, now, that is something that that officer trained to be very careful of, right?
What?
Having someone at their back, they can't see what they're doing and not knowing whether they're armed or not.
Correct.
Yeah, that's going to be something that certainly you don't want to happen, right?
Right, so at that point, you could be looking at both.
Right.
Trying to monitor her as well as the vehicle.
And officers, no matter how sharp they are, or how well trained they are, they only have one set of eyes, right?
Correct, sir.
And you never want to be in a position where you have to monitoring something front and back, right?
Right.
But based on what you know from this case, Tabitha Littles was behind Officer Benner and between the Dodge Durango and his vehicle, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk for a second about what you know about the Durango. Now, when the Durango was checked into the Rio Rancho Police Department, it would have arrived sealed, right?
No, they were done processing it at that point,
Okay.
so I believe it wasn't sealed, no.
Okay, and have you ever seen an inventory of the items that were taken from Andrew Romero?
I don't recall.
Okay. If I showed you a warrant return, might that refresh your recollection?
It could.
Okay.
I mean,
If it doesn't, just
Your
tell me.
Honor, may we approach?
The warrant return, and if you recognize it, tell me. If you don't, just tell me, okay? All right. And this is going to be marked for identification purposes, defendants D?
C.
C, okay. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, and it's bait stamp marked 396 through 400 from discovery.
Okay.
All right. So take a look at those pages, and if you don't recognize, just let me know. But if you do, tell me so.
I believe these are warrant returns and chain of custody, although I didn't fill any of these out.
Let me just ask you this. In the course and scope of as Rio Rancho case agent, do you believe you've seen these documents before?
I do.
Okay. And may I put you witness, Judge? I'm going to have you step down and look at a page for me, if you don't mind. Would that be okay, Judge? All right. So I'm going to have you look at page 1. Let's see. Oh, that's upside down. Let me focus it. Cindy. There we go. Okay. Let's do it far out. There we go. Let's see if this will autofocus.
Maybe turn the light on.
Oh.
Is there a light you can turn on?
Switch it off.
This one? There you go.
Well, let's go down. I don't know. Let's see. All right. Maybe let's do it the old-fashioned way, and I'll just approach the. Yeah, yeah, go back. Okay. May I approach the witness? And can I do this the old-fashioned way? I can't get this one. All right, so I'm handing you the first page, and it's Bates stamp marked 396. And that was part of the exhibit that I showed you a moment ago. That's a warrant return, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what's the date on that?
Date of warrant received, 5/26/2015. Date and time of warrant executed, 5/26/2015.
Okay, all right, and then let me show you what's page 2 of this exhibit. Let me have that one back.
Okay.
And this is Bates stamps mark 397. Can you take a look at the items received from Andrew Romero, if you will?
Okay.
Okay. Now, the designations, they begin with AR, right?
Yes, they are, do you want me to?
Just read AR what through what?
Okay. It looks like one AR-6.
Okay. And that goes AR 6 through what?
AR-6 through AR-10.
Okay. Now, through AR 6 through 10, is there any reference to any keys being taken from the person of Andrew Romero in AR 6 through 10?
No, there's not, but there is an et cetera at the end of AR-6,
Okay.
meaning there could be other items?
Sure. Well, let me ask you about that, because in your career as not only a law enforcement officer but a detective, one of the things that you're very careful about is documenting items that are taken pursuant to a search warrant execution, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So so you're going to, if you find like a pistol or some ammunition or some dope or a syringe, that's going to get noted, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then in this case, like all other cases, it gets a designated number for identification purposes later, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm going to show you Bates the next page, which is Bates stamp marked. It's cut off a little bit, but I believe it's 398. And take a look at those. And those are also, take a look at those real quick to familiarize yourself with it.
Okay.
Okay. Those are also, there's a certain number of entries there, correct?
Yes, there are 7.
Okay. And each one of those is AR and then a number, a corresponding number, right?
Yes, sir.
And then there may be one other number at the bottom, PC1, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And those have corresponding numbers and letters marked for identification purposes, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there's no keys on that list either, right?
There is not, no.
Okay. And then, all right, thank you. And then the last 2 pages are, take a look at these last 2 pages and tell me if you see your signature on there or if it's other officers.
My signature's not on here, it's
Okay.
other officers.
It looks like Steve Montano and Paul Chavez and maybe Officer Guillen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. Judge, move the admission of defendant's seat. All right. Now, let's go back to the evidence, the chain of custody form that you have in your possession right there, okay?
Okay.
All right. So let me put this back in here. Now approach. Let's move on. Thank you. All right. So then we've already established this last exhibit that Andrew Romero's AR1 through whatever, right?
Correct, sir.
Okay. And so if you'll look at your evidence, department evidence report.
Okay.
I believe, assuming these are numbered correctly, it's page 18 of 50, Bates stamp mark 1454. Will you turn to page 18 of 54?
What am I looking at?
Well, I'm going to the, it follows the number, should be page 18. And I'm looking for the first entry regarding Andrew Romero. It should be 1AR1.
Correct.
Okay. Are we on the right page?
Yes, although I have page 18 of 53.
Oh, 1853. Okay, we'll look at that in just a moment, but to see what's at the end of yours that may be different from this one. But the first entry, it's entry number 1AR1, right?
Correct.
Okay, and that runs through 1AR. Looks like 6A maybe. No, I'm sorry. 1AR10, and then there's a 1AR6A, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what's the date on 1AR1 that was collected by your department?
Uh, 5/26/2015 at $1,300.
Okay. The same day that the warrant was executed, right?
I believe so.
Okay. And the corresponding evidence report from your department that AR 6 through 10, there doesn't appear to have been any keys introduced or brought to your department or accepted with your department, at least in the items marked for Andrew Romero, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So then, may I approach the witness, Judge? Okay. So I'm going to approach it with what's been marked for identification purposes as defendants D. Sure. It's the 7/27/2015 one filed in this code. Okay. And just for identification purposes, this is Rio Rancho Police Department evidence form. May I approach the witness, Judge? Okay. Take a look at this 50-page document and tell me if you recognize that document. And it's dated at the top. The print was run. That print was run on what day?
7/27/2015.
Okay. Take a look at that and see if you recognize that document.
This is a Rio Rancho Police Department evidence report from our BEAST system.
Okay. And does that appear to be a record that's kept in the normal course of business of the Rio Rancho Police Department?
Yes, sir, and it's continually updated as evidence is entered. That's why you can add more evidence later on and then get another copy from that adds those other pieces of evidence.
Okay. All right. And items are going to be entered in sequential order? Or
Not necessarily,
Okay.
no.
Look and tell me, if you will, what the last numerical item is on that form, and tell me what date it's entered. I think it's 81.
Andrew, do you want me to read it?
Well, may I approach with Judge? May I approach with me? All right. So without, I don't want to reach in here. All right. So the number 81, right?
Correct, sir.
Is that the last numerical entry before we start with the ARs?
On this document?
Yes, on this document.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, what's the date of the last entry, number 80, on that document?
Of number 80?
Yeah.
Do you want me to describe what number 80 is?
Well, describe what number 80 is, and then tell me what date it was entered.
Number 80 is Andrew Romero's jail call, number 1 disc.
Okay. And what's the date on that?
6/8/2015.
Okay. And we've already established that items are numbered when they're entered into evidence, correct?
Correct.
And presumably it's given a number on the date it's entered into evidence, correct?
No, we can assign it a number.
Okay.
So in this case, there's several pieces of evidence that were collected by several different people or agencies, and we were able to go off certain numbers. So one person can use SW for swabs.
Right.
We can use 1 through whatever for evidence that we collected.
All right.
As far as this, there was, to this point, 80 pieces of evidence in sequential order of 1 through
80.
80.
All right, and you'll agree with me that the items that were tagged into evidence by the Rio Rancho Police Department were given a numerical number, right? Like 80, 79, 76, at least it appears that way.
I'm pretty sure that, yeah, we use numerical numbers,
Okay.
1 through 80
All
something.
right, so then and Officer Yin would have tagged these into evidence, correct?
Actually, it was myself and Detective Park who tagged them. We checked the items, tagged them into evidence.
Okay, so tell me again when the Durango came into your custody.
It was probably a few days later, and dropped off at our lot.
Okay, and when you processed the Durango, would you have processed the keys at that time?
I didn't process the Durango.
I'm sorry. When the Durango, you've already testified that the keys were with the Durango, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you don't know exactly what date, right?
Right, probably a few days later.
Okay, and any item of evidence would have been tagged at that point in time and tagged into evidence because you don't want it laying around, do you?
At this point, no, the keys were secured in Sergeant Reese's office due to the fact that a lot of times it's standard for us to get vehicles that are in our lot, and we hold on to these keys in case we need to get into them, move those vehicles. In this case, we were going to do a scan of the vehicle. And when we were going to do a scan of the vehicle with New Mexico State Police, we had to move the vehicle. So they were secured in Sergeant Reese's office.
So the keys to the Durango, the suspect vehicle in a police shooting, they were secured not in the evidence vault, but in somebody else's office?
No, not, yeah, at that time they were not. No. I entered them later.
Okay. And as a lead detective, were the keys did you ever order that they be photographed?
No, I didn't know anything about the keys, where they came from.
Okay. So you didn't learn any information about who had gotten the keys or where they came from?
No.
Okay. Were you ever advised that state police put the keys in the vehicle or something like that?
I'm assuming after they processed it, the keys stayed with the vehicle to get towed to our agency.
Okay. No testing, no fingerprints, whatever. You never sent the keys off to be tested for fingerprints or anything like that?
No, sir, the keys were never sent.
Okay. And unfortunately, probably if they were stored in somebody else's office, lots of hands touched those keys because they're sitting in some sergeant's desk drawer, right?
We have a lockbox in the office that they were stored in. I did manipulate the keys, and yes, I did not use gloves when I moved the vehicle for a scan.
Okay, all right. And when was the scan completed?
I know that, I can't recall. I know we set up an appointment to do the scan,
Okay.
and then that one didn't go through. So whatever happened as far as the scan not happening that day, it was scheduled for a later date, and I wasn't there at the time.
Okay. Judge, I would move defendants D into evidence.
I would object. Hearsay, Your Honor.
It's already been described as a record kept in the normal course of business at the Rio Rancho Police Department.
He's not the record keeper, Your Honor, and it's still hearsay.
Rephrase your question.
Detective, do you recognize this document? The evidence received?
I do, of an older version.
Okay. And it's dated, what date?
7/27/2015.
Is that evidence receipt, is that typical of a record kept in the ordinary course of business at your department?
Yes, sir.
And you, in fact, entered many of these items into evidence?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it doesn't appear to have been altered or changed in any way?
No, it's just an older version.
And it's bait stamped, it has discovery bait stamps on the bottom?
I'm sorry?
Well, may I put you in judgment? It's on the bottom here, it's bait stamped 1447 through 1496.
Yes.
And those numbers, and it's page 1 through 50?
Yes.
Okay. And those numbers don't appear to be out of order or out of sequential order?
They are out of sequential order because they weren't entered in order.
No, I'm talking about the pages of this document.
They don't appear to be, no.
Okay, all right. So again, Judge, I would move this into evidence. It's an official document. It's kept in the ordinary course of business. It's identified by the detective as such.
No objection, Your Honor.
And I'll take the steering pads off, take the steers off. Well, this is Judge, no objection.
I said no objection.
Oh, no objection, you stay, Your Honor. Counsel, please. I'm going to have you look at 2 pages, and they're pages 122 of 376 and 123 of 376, to see if you recognize this document, okay?
Okay.
I'm specifically looking at the evidence receipt for the Durango keys.
It looks like a chain of custody report from our beast system.
Okay. And we've already talked about the item that's been entered into evidence, the Durango keys, right?
Correct.
Okay. And we've already talked, you've already seen defendant's exhibit D, right? That was what you just looked at?
Yes.
Okay. And that stopped at number 80, right?
I believe it was 81.
81, okay. And that was an entry from June of 2015, right? I can give it back to you if you want to look at it.
I'm sure you're correct.
Okay. And then item number 82 is noted on this document as the Durango keys, right?
Correct.
Okay. And what date does that say that Durango keys were received?
5/27/2015, 2:58 hours from Detective Shonkin.
Okay. Now, there was no 82 in the previous exhibit that you looked at, right?
Right.
Okay. When, if you recall, or when, if you know, was item number 82 added to the evidence receipt for the Rio Rancho Police Department, if you know?
When I entered it and created item number 82 to enter those keys as a result of the scan not being done, I said, well, these keys need to be entered, so I created an item number 82 to enter those keys to keep them there.
And just, please excuse my ignorance, but item number 81 was entered into evidence in June of 2000, I believe in late June of 2015, but item number 81 was received, and it appears to have been entered into evidence on May 27th. Now, I suspect that your system does things numerically, right?
It will, but we can change the item numbers because, as I explained, you can change item numbers within the beast.
So your testimony then, I guess, is that you waited many, many days until, may I see the defendant's spot? Let me defend this speak. Number 80, we have number 80. It was entered on, number 80 appears to have been entered into evidence on June 8th of 2015, and item number 81 was entered into evidence on June 10th of 2015. Is that look right?
Now repeat your question.
Well, item number 81, when was that entered into evidence?
The collection date of it was 6/10/2015 at 12:31 hours.
And that was collected, when was it entered into evidence?
That, it doesn't show on this document.
Okay. Do you know when item number 81 was entered into evidence? Can you tell, or do you know?
I entered these jail phone calls shortly after I downloaded them from email and downloaded them onto disk and entered them into evidence.
So I guess it's your testimony that you went back and entered item number 81, and then item number 82, which was the keys according to defendant's E, right? 82 is the keys, right?
Yes, 82 is the keys, and I believe that's where I left off with the evidence that I entered, so that I entered it as 82.
And so I guess based on your testimony that you backdated the collection date to the 27th, even though the collection of the jail logs is June 10th of 2015, right?
No, that's the date they're collected, not the date they were entered into the Beast. All these times here are the date that the evidence was actually collected by someone.
Okay. Do you know when you entered the keys into evidence?
I will say that it was a time later after when we were going to do the vehicle scan.
Okay.
And when the vehicle scan didn't go through, I had the keys. I said I probably should enter these into evidence, which I did.
Probably a good idea to enter them into evidence, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. So but you have already testified that you remember seeing the evidence received from state police, and those keys are certainly not on that evidence receipt, correct?
Yes, sir, they're not.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. When was the scan completed? It's called a Leica scan, is that right?
May I refer to my report? I might have it in
No,
there.
please do.
Okay.
Please do. I don't want you to testify something about that.
I'm not sure if I have it in there because I wasn't involved on the scan.
Well, take a look, because I mean, you kept the keys with you in your department, not checked into evidence, preparing for the scan, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't have that documented. Again, I didn't, the second scan, I believe I was out of town or in training or something at that point. I wasn't there.
Okay. And you don't have an offhand memory of the month that was supposed to happen?
I don't, sir. No, I don't.
Okay. Was it supposed to happen, but you'll agree with me that what's been marked for admission to evidence as Defendants D is dated July 27th of 2015, right?
I'm sorry?
May I approach, Judge? This. Marked as Defendants D. The date on that is July 27th of 2015, right?
Yes, but you've got an older copy
Well,
of
that's
the
what I'm
Beast
asking.
report.
July 27th of 2015, there are no Durango keys listed as checked into evidence for the Rio Rancho Police Department, right?
Correct.
As of July 27th of 2015,
Correct.
almost 2 months after the shooting.
Correct.
You're on a past witness.
Detective Romero, when you went to the New Mexico State Police after you found out that Mr. Romero had been taken into custody along with 200 other individuals who were with him were detained for questioning, correct?
Correct.
And you were asked about all three of those individuals, I believe. Did you have a good opportunity to get a look at all three of those individuals?
Yes.
I'm going to put on the screen states 288, first of all. Now, does this... Now, you recognize that individual?
Yes, I do, ma'am.
Who is that?
Michelle Candelaria.
And does she look in that picture like she did when you saw her at the state police officer on the early morning hours of the 26th
Yes, ma'am.
of May? And you recognize who's in this photograph?
Yes, I do. That's the defendant, Andrew Romero.
And is that the way he appeared when you observed him at the state police on early morning hours of May 26th?
Yes, ma'am.
Do those two individuals, in your observation, did they look anything at all alike?
Nothing alike.
Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier, or you alluded to the fact that when keys come in, or the vehicle comes in as part of a search or part of a case, the keys are normally with the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And did you say that the keys are handled differently than other pieces of evidence?
Correct. Sometimes, yes, they are.
And what did you mean by that?
Meaning, a lot of times we have vehicles towed to our agency for processing, whether it's DWI seizures, whether it's a violent crime such as this, whether it's a simple search warrant that we're doing maybe for property. And what happens is when we have these the vehicles towed to our agencies, obviously we've talked about sealing vehicles for evidence. They're towed to our agency and we maintain custody of the keys to manipulate that vehicle. Basically to get inside it without breaking things, breaking windows to try to get inside that vehicle. We'll maintain the keys with us so we can get in that vehicle whenever needed.
So when you talk about the key, the Durango key being placed in Sergeant Reese's office, was it just in the office laying on a desk or something?
No, it was secured in his office. We have a key lockbox and also he has his drawers that are locked.
So from the lock, so it went from the Durango to the lockbox in Sergeant Reese's office?
Correct.
And then from there, where did it go?
From there, I had the keys in order to try to do the initial first scan that we were going to do with the state police and kind of explain that basically we're going to do a 3D imaging of the vehicle with the scanner. And I took the keys from there to move the vehicle in order to move it out of our lot a little bit, a few feet, 10, 20 feet, so that they could do the scan around the vehicle.
And do you recall, as part of the process of scheduling that scan, that defense counsel investigators were invited?
I wasn't aware that they were invited, but they did show up.
Okay. Were they able to observe the Durango and were they able to observe the Durango and the fact that it was open with that key?
I'm not sure if they observed me open the door with the key. Obviously, I had explained to them that I had started the vehicle up and moved it. So the key did fit and did start the Durango.
That, the scan that you're talking about, do you know, I know you testified you don't remember exactly when it took place, but do you know whether it took place before or after July of 2015?
I can't recall. I believe it was after.
Okay, that's fine. You were asked a lot of questions about the scope of your knowledge as the lead detective in this case, whether it be by your own agency's actions or the actions of others. During the entire course of this investigation, was there ever any evidence that either Michelle Candelaria or Crystal Romero were involved in the murder of Officer Greg Benner?
Objection. Other approach?
The evidence that you had in this case, was there ever any evidence that led you to look at anyone other than Tabitha Littles and Andrew Romero as being involved in the killing of Officer Benner?
No evidence, no witnesses, nothing to that effect.
Are you aware of whether Michelle Candelario and Crystal Romero were ever charged or charged in any way with the death of Officer Benner?
No, they were not.
In fact, are you aware of whether or not they were detained after they were questioned at the state police office on May 26th?
After they were questioned?
Yes.
Detained during and sometime after, yes.
I'm sorry?
Sometime after, yes.
Sometime after what?
After their questioning?
Okay, were you aware of whether or not they were retained or were they released after they were questioned?
I believe released, yes.
And you were also asked some questions about what the proper procedure would have been if you were involved in a stop such as the one Officer Benner encountered on May 25th. Would you have run a third person if the third person would have been in the car?
Due to the information, yes.
And do you believe, would you expect a trained and experienced police officer to run all adults in the vehicle?
Yes.
And was Officer Greg Nigel Benner an experienced officer?
Yes.
One moment. And based upon your review of all the evidence, and you did mention that you had listened to the dispatch and all the other evidence, did Officer Nigel Greg Benner ever run any other individuals besides the Albert Fresca's name he was given and Tabitha Little's that night?
No, ma'am,
On
not
that
through,
stop.
oh, I'm sorry, no, ma'am, not through the radio and not on his MDT, which is his mobile data computer.
Thank you.
Oh, so you missed it now.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, close it, man.